The rise and influence of Islam in Albania, European Islamic history.
It begins in the heart of the Balkans, where mountains rise like ancient guardians and rivers weave stories older than empires.
Albania, a small but storied land on the Adriatic coast, has long been a crossroads of civilizations, faiths, and empires. Few would imagine that this rugged corner of Europe would become one of the most fascinating examples of how Islam took root, flourished, and shaped a nation's identity. Yet the rise of Islam in Albania is not merely a tale of conquest or conversion. It is a complex story of resilience, adaptation, and coexistence, where faith intertwined with survival and destiny. To understand how Islam came to Albania, one must travel back to the late Middle Ages, when the Ottoman Empire's shadow began to stretch over southeastern Europe. The 14th century was a time of turmoil in the Balkans. Medieval Christian kingdoms like Serbia and Byzantium were weakening, while local Albanian princes fought for dominance among themselves. Into this fragmented landscape came the Ottoman Turks, bringing with them not just armies but a new civilization, a new order, and a new faith: Islam. At first, the Ottomans were seen merely as another conquering power among many.
But unlike the invaders before them, they came with a system that could integrate conquered peoples rather than simply dominate them.
When Ottoman forces began entering Albanian territories in the late 14th century, their advance was gradual, punctuated by both resistance and cooperation. The famous Albanian hero, Gjurg Kastrioti, known to history as Skanderbeg, led a fierce rebellion against Ottoman rule in the mid-15th century, keeping the Turks at bay for over 2 decades. His defiance became legendary, and his name still evokes national pride among Albanians today. Yet even as Skanderbeg fought under the banner of Christianity, many Albanians, especially in the southern and central regions, were already beginning to interact with Ottoman administrators, merchants, and scholars who introduced Islamic customs, education, and legal systems.
When Skanderbeg died in 1468, the resistance gradually faded.
Within a few years, most of Albania came under full Ottoman control. It was then that the real story of Islam in Albania began, not through forced conversions, as often imagined, but through a slow and complex social transformation.
Under Ottoman rule, conversion to Islam brought clear practical advantages. Muslims could own land more easily, access higher positions in administration, and enjoy reduced taxes compared to non-Muslims, who were required to pay the jizya, a tax levied on non-Muslim subjects. Yet material benefits alone cannot explain the depth of Islamic influence that followed.
The Ottoman system allowed local Albanians to integrate deeply into the empire's fabric.
As Islam spread, mosques, madrasas, religious schools, and Sufi lodges known as tekkas began to dot the Albanian landscape. In these centers, Islamic learning flourished alongside local customs. The Albanian embrace of Islam was not abrupt. It evolved over generations, often blending pre-existing traditions with the new faiths. This process of cultural fusion created a unique expression of Islam, deeply spiritual yet pragmatic, local yet universal.
One of the earliest and most powerful influences in Albania's Islamic journey came through Sufism, the mystical dimension of Islam. Orders like the Bektashis, Halvetus, and Rufais found fertile ground in Albania's mountainous and village-centered society.
The Bektashi order, in particular, became profoundly influential. With its open, humanistic approach and tolerance for diversity, Bektashism resonated deeply with Albanians, many of whom were drawn to its emphasis on spiritual freedom and its reverence for both Islamic and local saintly traditions. The Bektashi lodges became not just religious centers but cultural and political hubs, fostering a distinct form of Albanian Islamic identity that valued both mysticism and patriotism. As centuries passed, Islam did more than reshape Albania's faith, it redefined its place in Europe.
The Ottomans integrated Albanian Muslims into the vast bureaucracy and military. Many Albanians rose to high positions in the empire, serving as viziers, governors, and generals.
Notably, more than 40 Grand Viziers of the Ottoman Empire were of Albanian origin, a remarkable testament to the deep integration of Albanians into Islamic and imperial life. The most famous among them, Koprulu Mehmed Pasha, founded a powerful dynasty of Ottoman statesmen whose influence stretched across the 17th century. Their administrative reforms and military successes left an enduring legacy, both in Istanbul and back home in Albania.
Yet while Islam was consolidating its roots, Christianity did not vanish from Albania. The country remained religiously diverse, with significant Orthodox Christian communities in the south and Catholic ones in the north. For centuries, Muslims, Catholics, and Orthodox Christians lived side by side, often sharing customs, festivals, and even local saints' shrines. This coexistence was not always perfect, but it created a social fabric of tolerance rare for its time in Europe. In Albanian villages, it was not unusual for Muslim families to join Christian neighbors in celebrating weddings or harvest festivals, demonstrating how religion, while important, was often secondary to community bonds. The Ottoman centuries were not only an era of faith but also one of transformation in language, architecture, and art.
Ottoman urban culture reshaped Albanian towns. Mosques with graceful minarets rose beside bustling bazaars, public baths, and caravanserais. Cities like Berat, Gjirokastër, Elbasan, and Shkodra became centers of Islamic learning and trade. In Berat's old quarter, the call to prayer echoed through cobbled streets lined with white Ottoman houses and arched windows. The architecture of this era remains one of Albania's most visible reminders of its Islamic past.
Education under Islam played a key role in raising a literate and civically aware class. The madrasas introduced Quranic studies, Arabic, Persian, and Ottoman Turkish literature. Albanian scholars contributed to Islamic thought and poetry, writing in both local and Ottoman languages. Religious knowledge became a path to social mobility, and many Albanian students studied in Istanbul, Cairo, and Damascus. Their return brought new ideas, enriching Albanian Islamic culture with broader spiritual and intellectual influences.
However, the rise of Islam in Albania cannot be viewed only through the lens of religion. It was also a political story tied to the empire's fortunes.
As the Ottoman power waned in the 18th and 19th centuries, European powers began eyeing the Balkans, stoking nationalist movements among Christian populations.
The Albanian case was different. Divided among Muslims, Catholics, and Orthodox, Albanians did not unite under a single religious banner. Instead, their shared language and culture became the foundation for national identity. This was one of the most fascinating consequences of Islam's rise. Rather than alienating Albanians from Europe, it encouraged them to imagine a broader identity that transcended religion. In the 19th century, the Albanian national awakening, Rilindja Kombëtare, sought to define what it meant to be Albanian in a world of competing empires and ideologies. Many of its leaders were Muslim intellectuals and clerics who saw no contradiction between their faith and their patriotism. Figures like Sami Frashëri, a prominent Muslim intellectual, wrote passionately about Albanian unity, education, and independence. His vision was of a modern, secular Albania that respected all religions while fostering a strong national consciousness. It was a revolutionary idea at the time, an Islamic-influenced patriotism that embraced pluralism.
By the time Albania declared independence from the Ottoman Empire in 1912, Islam had been deeply woven into the nation's identity for over 4 centuries. About 70% of Albanians were Muslim, divided between Sunnis and Bektashis.
The early Albanian state faced the daunting task of building a national identity that could unite Muslims, Catholics, and Orthodox Christians while navigating the pressures of European politics. Western observers often viewed Albania's Islamic majority with suspicion, associating it with the Orient. Yet Albanian leaders, both Muslim and Christian, worked to present their nation as a modern, European state rooted in tolerance.
In the interwar period, King Zog I, himself a Muslim, sought to modernize Albania while balancing religious influences. He introduced secular reforms, curtailed the power of religious institutions, and encouraged Western dress and education. Despite these changes, Islam remained a vital social force. The Bektashi order, persecuted in Turkey after Ataturk's secular reforms, found a safe haven in Albania and even established its world headquarters there in 1929. This transformed Albania into a spiritual center of Sufi thought in Europe. Then came the 20th century's darkest chapter, the communist era under Enver Hoxha. His regime, which lasted from 1944 to 1985, waged one of the most radical anti-religious campaigns in history. In 1967, Albania declared itself the world's first atheist state, closing all mosques, churches, and monasteries. Religious leaders were imprisoned or executed, sacred books burned, and worship banned. For decades, the Islamic heritage that had shaped Albanian society was forced underground. Generations grew up without formal religious education, and the sound of the call to prayer vanished from Albanian skies. Yet faith has a way of surviving silence. When communism fell in 1991, Albanians rediscovered their spiritual roots. Mosques reopened, Sufi orders revived, and young people sought to learn about the faith their grandparents had once practiced. But post-communist Islam in Albania was different. It was not a return to the Ottoman past, but the beginning of a new chapter. The country's Muslims embraced a pluralistic, European Islam that valued tolerance, democracy, and coexistence. Religious leaders worked to rebuild institutions, while also promoting interfaith harmony as part of Albania's modern identity. Today, Albania stands out in Europe as a rare model of religious harmony. Muslims, Orthodox, Catholics, and Bektashis coexist peacefully, often celebrating each other's holidays.
The country's constitution guarantees freedom of religion, and its society embodies a quiet but profound respect for diversity. The Bektashi World Headquarters in Tirana welcomes visitors from across the globe, while new mosques, like the Grand Etehembe Mosque, have been restored as national heritage sites. In this new era, Islam is not seen as a symbol of division, but as part of Albania's cultural DNA, a bridge between East and West. Thanks for watching the video.